Welcome to part 8 of module 1. We just finalized part 7, where we did look at the first attribute of the risk definitions that focused on the fact that risk can be either positive or negative. In this part 8, we are focusing on attribute number 2, and that's the one that looks at the fact that risk should actually be viewed in the context of how it impacts on your farming objectives. So you don't just come up and say risks that have no relation to your farming objectives, because then they actually don't relate to your farming enterprise and its objectives. And you actually see the relevance of looking at risks in the context of your farming objectives. So let me just bore you with a bit of some theoretical lecture, but hang on. This is extremely very critical for you to understand the issues around objectives of a farming enterprise or any other enterprise beyond the agricultural sector. So, you may have heard of what is called the shareholder theory, sometimes also called the Friedman doctrine. Why? Because this was actually coined by a gentleman called Milton Friedman. The shareholder theory is a view that the only duty of a corporation, for example, your farming enterprise, is to maximize the profits accruing to its shareholders. And the shareholders could be the farm owner. So this is the traditional view of the purpose of any enterprise, including a farming enterprise. So that's the shareholder theory. Now, I must actually indicate that I have also seen farming enterprises where you can actually see that this farm is actually being run with the sole purpose of literally looking at the interests of the shareholders. Well, probably they read too much of the Friedman doctrine, indicating that that is the sole purpose of any enterprise. So that is the shareholder theory. But along the way, there were quite a number of critics of this shareholder theory that states that the only duty of, say, a farming enterprise is to maximize the profits for the farm owner. So some of the emerging nuances is what now became as the triple bottom line theory. So others call it the triple P, and this was coined by a gentleman called Edward Freeman. And Edward Freeman, he was of the view that there's this between a business and its customers, the suppliers, employees, investors, and the general community. So with the stakeholder theory, unlike the shareholder theory, basically recognizes that profit maximization is not the only objective of a farming enterprise. Now, you might actually be asking, what then are these other objectives that will probably rank pari passu with profit maximization? So, like I said, this brings us to the triple bottom line theory, which basically indicates that you've got to look at the triple P. The first P basically recognizes the shareholder theory and states that profit maximization is one of the prime objectives of any enterprise, including a farming enterprise. But it indicates that besides profit, you also have to focus on the people. And the people could be employees or the villages that are actually surrounding your farming enterprise and any other people that you think are actually impacted by your farm. And this could also be consumers of your farming products. You've got to have their interests as you pursue profits. And I'm sure you're already beginning to actually conceptualize. I think we'll get into details when we actually begin to look at the specific risks. One of the issues is around pests, use of pests. So there's what is called the withdrawal period for the use of chemicals or pests. But imagine the withdrawal period of this chemical is probably, say, 7 days. And then just because there's an opportunity for you to make money, remember the profit maximization, 2 days, you've got an order before the withdrawal period of that chemical. And then you go ahead and harvest and supply. Then it means you've actually offended the triple bottom line theory, because it says, hey, as you pursue profit maximization, you've got to also look at the people that will consume this. And that then also brings us to the third P, which is actually planet. Basically, what it says is that you've got to actually have all these three as objectives of your farming enterprise, and they must actually rank equal. Profit maximization is not like a primary objective. Even the aspect of looking at the people and the planet, those all are actually ranking as prime objectives of your farming enterprise. So that is the triple bottom line theory. Now, along the way, there were other theories that actually did emerge. And one of those, which has now been popularized, is what is called the ESG. That's environmental, social, and governance. And I actually say ESG is basically just a mirror of the triple bottom line theory. Why? In the triple bottom line theory, we actually indicated that there's pursuit for profit, okay? And that falls obviously within the governance aspects where you look at the economics of the enterprise. Then the second P for the triple bottom line was the aspect on the people. And what the ESG brings now, there's the S after the E, okay? We'll talk about the E, is the social aspects. The second P of the triple bottom line basically looks at the focus on the people. And then the ESG has that S, which basically focuses on the social aspect. And that's where you actually see the interconnectedness of the triple bottom line theory and ESG. And then the last, remember, triple bottom line also has a focus on the planet. And the equivalent of that in the ESG equation, if you like, is the environmental, the E within that ESG. So these two are kind of cementing the rationale that the objectives of any enterprise, such as a farming enterprise, must actually look at, number one, profit, which is key, the economics aspect of your farming enterprise, profit, cost reduction, and all that. And then you look at the social aspects, the people, the headmen, the workers, and all that. We actually have a section on social risks, I think, as one of the modules later on in this course. And then you look at environmental or planetary objectives. So these can actually help you to frame the different objectives of your farming enterprise. And then when you actually begin to do risk identification, you begin to look at, from an economic or profit perspective, what can actually impact me attaining my objectives regards the profit maximization. And then you also look at any risks that could actually impact the social aspects, focus on the people, and also environmental or planetary aspects. I want to also draw you to what I call the three holy grails of any farming enterprise, whether you're doing livestock, horticulture, fish farming, and this is what is called the QQC. That's quality, quantity, and consistency. Of course, I've talked about those three objectives on profit maximize, focus on the planetary issues, environmental and social. But I must actually say, from an operational perspective and even the bigger picture, other than those objectives that we actually looked at, I would actually say you need to actually pay attention to these three holy grails. Because anything that you do, whether you're actually doing dairy farming, fish farming, horticulture farming, you first need to make sure that your product, your farming product, attains the quality standards that are actually prescribed by the buyer of your product. So in our case, one of the products that we do, which is one of our major crops, is the long English cucumbers. And the specifications are such that that cucumber needs to be 8 centimeters long, and then the diameter needs to be about 8 centimeters. If I fail to basically attain those specs, that is actually bound to become a huge risk in my farming objectives. So you really need to make sure that you've got an objective that really looks at the quality of your farming products. Whether you're doing goat farming, go for the best. Dairy farming, the hygiene, even the breeds of the cattle that you have, the varieties that you have from a crop farming perspective. Quality is one of the prime objectives in any farming enterprise, cutting across different agricultural value chains. The second issue is around quantity. Yes, you can have a very good quality, but remember, these off-takers also, numbers do matter. So if the off-taker says, I need 1,000 cucumbers every day, you've got to deliver 1,000 cucumbers every day. There's no point in you showing up with a quality cucumber that is 8 centimeters in terms of diameter, and also length is 30 centimeters. But then all you do is you have one crate when this off-taker is actually asking for, say, 50 crates. So you actually realize that in your farming objectives also, you actually have to look at the aspects of quantity of any given product that you're actually getting to the market, because that also changes the dynamics of your pursuit towards profit maximization, which is one of the prime objectives like we just discussed. Then the third aspect, or the third holy grail, is consistency. If you are doing beef farming and you're supplying beef to this butchery, the expectation is that you keep coming. If they need beef, so many kgs of beef every week, you need to make sure that you supply. If someone buys, milk from you, you need to be able to make sure that you deliver the liters that they require per week. For us in the either poultry or horticulture farming, depending on what you're farming, you need to make sure that you're actually consistent in your production and delivery. And one of the aspects about consistency is that it's got these two effects on. You need to be very consistent in quality of your farming products, but also being consistent in the quantities that you actually take to the market. So as you frame the different objectives of your farming enterprise, which will then be the sounding board for identification of risks that will actually affect your farming enterprise, I actually encourage you to look at those two frameworks that I talked about. The first one being the triple bottom line, and then ESG, and then you look at the three holy grails that obviously have been coined by myself on QQC: quality, quantity, and consistency.